Welcome to a National Newspaper Publishers Association and Let It Be Known special report. Lawmakers in Mississippi are at odds over a bill that would create an unelected state appointed court system in a district within Jackson, a majority black city, with some concern that the move smacks of modern day Jim Crow. The Republican controlled Mississippi House of Representatives passed a bill, as we've mentioned several times over now, House Bill 1020 last week, to expand the Capitol Complex Improvement District, a defined area within Jackson, and create a separate court system within the city, which is 83% black. Let's say that one more time, 83% black, according to the latest US Census data. Two state offices, both of which are currently held by white officials, would entirely be the ones doing the appointing. Our special guest is the 54th NAACP Image Award Chairman's Award recipient. He is also the chairman of the January 6th committee, and he's also Mississippi's Congressman, the wonderful, the incomparable Bennie Thompson. And also joining us is Austin Cooper of the Washington Informer, and Barrington Salmon, of course, an NNPA outstanding journalist and correspondent. Congressman, welcome to the Black Press of America's Let It Be Known. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Well, Congressman, let's just jump right into it. It seems this is definitely happening. It's passed the House. The Senate, of course, down there in Mississippi is comprised of mostly, well, the majority Republicans, I should say. Looks like it's going to pass there. And of course, we know that the governor will not hesitate to sign this into law if it passes. Is there anything that the federal government can do? Because this certainly has Jim Crow, and the mayor he's been on this program. He's been elsewhere. He's come out and said this is apartheid. This is, yesterday, I believe he was quoted as saying that those congressmen, or told those congressmen, that the only thing they were missing was the hoods. I mean, what can the federal government do here, if anything?
Well, I think, unfortunately, the only thing we can do right now is to look at the process. But if it somehow goes through, then I think there's grounds to challenge it in court. And as you know, the courts in the South, whereas they used to be groundbreaking in decision making, the Fifth Circuit ostensibly now is one of the most conservative circuit courts in the country, and a lot of our judges at the trial level are also conservative. But all that being said, you can't just let bad behavior or bad law stick. You have to challenge it. So I think, given what the Constitution of 1890 here in Mississippi says about how we elect our judges, and that now the Mississippi legislature, in its infinite wisdom, is trying to put on this majority black city a standard that no other city, no other county has on it. So, and the fact that this majority black city doesn't necessarily oppose help. It's just how you present the help. Citizens of the community would like additional resources. Jackson has historically been punished because of its majority black population. And so, but under normal circumstances, what you do is you go to the elected leadership and say, look, I understand you have a problem, and our legislature is interested. What do you see in terms of help that you need? That's how normal people do it. Now, abnormal people would just decide what's in your best interest and do it. And it just so happened that in this situation, that's what occurred. And it's unfortunate because this is the capital city. And so it's like taxation without representation. It's colonialism at its worst. And basically, it's Jim Crow 2.0. In other
Yeah.
words, you told us to, uh, if you want to change things, register and you can vote and support the candidate of your choice. Well, the people in Jackson, Mississippi started doing that. And the moment they started putting people in office that reflected the majority of the population, the state of Mississippi started withdrawing resources. Our water and sewer department is struggling right now. So you're damned if you do, and obviously you're damned if you don't. And
And speaking of,
so
Congressman,
the
speaking
federal
of
government
that,
is the back.
yeah, and speaking of the water, there's also Senate Bill 2889, which would transfer all water service from the city of Jackson to another entity. I know that's also troubling.
Well, it is, because the same thing is, all of a sudden you have decided what's in the best interest of customers in the city of Jackson, and you never had a conversation with the leadership. I had to get $600 million from the federal level to help. And all of a sudden, they're now saying, well, the moment you fix it, we're going to take it. No, if you want it, you can take it right now. And then you can spend state money. He said, oh, no, no. The legislation is going to say, after you fix it, we're going to take it. Now, look, I've been in Mississippi my whole life. And I know when something is amiss in the legislative arena. Both these issues are clearly a reversionary attempt to disenfranchise the majority of voters in the capital city. And so the federal government has a role when that occurs, but it's only when those instances become law can the federal government step in.
Yeah. Austin Cooper of the Washington Informer, you want to jump in here?
Mr. Chairman, good to see you again, sir.
We're saying,
I understand that you are waiting to for the process to play out in Jackson, but have you and members of the Congressional Black Caucus, sir, begun having at least soft conversations with the Department of Justice, and this is indeed going to become a reality, so that when it is passed and signed into law by the governor, that we can hit the ground running?
yes. Well, a good question. We have. I have been sharing with them on a regular basis the different press conferences that have been held by NAACP, by other elected officials, by community organizations, saying it's not right, that it didn't involve a process of inclusion. And right now, every amendment that gets offered by somebody to try to change it, somebody else makes an amendment to table it. And when you have a super majority in the legislative body, that means you don't even get a chance to debate the issue. And so we are in a catch-22 situation. The Republican supermajority is flexing its muscles. And they're now saying, well, I know how it look. It might look bad, but all we're trying to do is help the poor people of Jackson. But when Biloxi, Mississippi needs help, when Oxford, Mississippi needs help, you go and sit down with those local officials and say, how can we help you? And basically what they've done, there's a term called local and private. When you want to help a respective community, you send that legislation through local and private, which means those local representatives and senators are the ones who are sponsoring the legislation on behalf of the city or county they represent. Well, in this instance, as you know, the person who sponsored the legislation in this instance lives over 100 miles from Jackson and Hinds County, but yet and still he feels that he knows what's best without even consulting the local elected officials. And so that's the real stickler for this. This is not an ordinary process. It's not ordinary legislation, and to disrespect the members who are elected from Jackson and Hinds County in this legislative process borders clearly on illegal activity in terms of the net impact of the population. So, look, I didn't get elected in Mississippi without the help of the federal government. Our members in the legislature here in Mississippi didn't get elected without the help of the federal government. The districts that they got elected from were drawn because we had something in place back then called the Voting Rights Act. Now, obviously, some of those same courts that we talked about are chipping away at it. But there's still something called one man or one person, one vote, and there's still the diminution of the minority vote. And so what we have occurring here, just on its face, 83% city, where the majority white Mississippi legislature gave them no consideration in the legislation. And they said, we don't want it. But yet still you're going to force the city to take it when they said they don't want it. So again, it's that relic of Jim Crow raising its ugly head in both of these pieces of legislation.
Absolutely. Barrington Salmon of the NMPA. Barrington.
Mr. Congressman, thank you for taking the time. I'm wondering if thank you, sir. If this passes, what are the implications? What is it going to look like on the ground if it's implemented?
Well, it would be horrible. That means that all of the other judges in the state of Mississippi who hold the same title, they are elected by a certain number of people. Mm-hmm. And this group of judges will be appointed by one person from the Mississippi Supreme Court. There's no residency requirement. There are no requirements for these individuals. And so, again, normally you get a chance in America to vote for somebody who lives in your community or live in your city or live in your county. Mm-hmm. Here we have appointed judges who have no term of office, who have the same responsibilities as elected judges, but though they are not accountable to the people of which they are serving. So on its face, it's separate and unequal form of justice. And I'm convinced that when we say that the Constitution of the state of Mississippi says that these kind of judges have to be elected, and all of a sudden you develop legislation that says, no, we're going to put the same judges in place, but rather than elect them, we're going to appoint them. and they don't serve a geographical area by population. And the only area you serve in this majority Black city is this district that you've carved out. And so it's unfortunate. And I don't care, there's a saying in the South and probably in the North too, if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a duck. It's a duck. So what we have in this situation, I don't care if they put lipstick on this duck or whatever, it's still a duck. And so we have to push back. And that's why the Black press is so important in this process, because at least you put it in perspective, where, you know, some of the other people just, they'll say, well, so-and-so said this, so-and-so said this, and we just don't know where it's going to go. But the Black press gives a perspective that is so important for a situation like this, because there's no other piece of legislation in the state of Mississippi that we can point our finger to, like the one like the two we're talking about now. There's no, there's no example, and so yes, go ahead.
Yeah, Congressman, I want to highlight a couple of things for our viewers are just as important. David Youngblood mentions, he says, first of all, you're his hero. He says, Jim Crow seems to be the most constant value seen in American thought since Reconstruction. And Kimberly Cooper is asking that, she says, this sounds very much like the new Jim Crow 2.0. What are the people of Jackson, those most negatively impacted by these proposals? What are they saying openly about it? How are the residents of Jackson mobilizing?
Well, that's a good point. They've had daily demonstrations at the Capitol, a lot of conversation in churches over the weekend about how bad it is. Jim Clyburn was in town 2 weeks ago speaking at New Bethel AME Church. He brought it up. So it's on the lips of everybody. And there's a distinction between being concerned about crime and the solution being offered. Nobody wants to live in a community that's fraught with crime. But you also say the solution has to fit the problem. In this instance, the solution does not fit the problem. So people are saying, oh, well, you just don't want any help. That's not true. But I want help that fits the problem. You know, we don't need a white controlled government coming to tell a white controlled city what to do. The people who elected the leaders have decided who they want as their leaders. If you don't like them, then you need to move back to the city and organize against them. But you can't do it from 100 miles away and expect people to accept it. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, what it is. It's not complex. It's again part of this ugly underbelly that I see in Washington on a daily basis, where people just refuse to accept anything other than how they see it. They don't even want to debate the issues of the day. And so that is kind of funneling down through the state level here in Mississippi, to the point that I was in Natchez, Mississippi, speaking Sunday. And when I brought the issue of what was occurring at the state capitol in Jackson, if you had been there, it was like everybody in that church 100 miles away from Natchez identified as if they were in Jackson, because the core issue is the disrespect that the Mississippi legislature has shown this majority Black city. And that disrespect is demonstrated on a regular. We talked a little bit about our water system. Well, they withdrew the resources from the water system to the point that it was just operating on life support, you know. And so in addition to this discussion, the state of Mississippi is also trying to take the Jackson Airport. So
we're looking at a complete
they've
takeover.
already passed legislation. Oh yeah, yeah. You know, you want to take the police department, you want to take the judiciary, and you want to take the airport. The three major engines that a city run by, you want to give it to some other authority to run, and how you fashion it is, oh, we just trying to help. But again, you never talk to the people. You never give people options. I mean, you know, you have to debate the issues. So I think that the community is still fighting with every fiber in their body. It's just that we're operating with a super majority in the legislature, which means they can get anything done. It's the court of public opinion that's going to change it. And the reason I say that is, you know, we just recently changed our flag, you know, because we didn't want to be perceived as fighting the Civil War. And so we had all these people of goodwill who came and said, oh, that Confederate battle symbol, we need to get rid of it because it's hurting our economy. People don't want to come and have the Mississippi experience. Companies are not looking at us because they see us as living in the past. So they got rid of it. Now, this week, those same companies that helped us change the flag, we haven't heard anything from them about these two pieces of legislation, which actually is just as negative as the Confederate battle symbol on the Mississippi flag. So they'll be in contact and saying, you need to issue a public statement about this legislation that is bad for business. It creates a negative impact on our state, and we are above that. And so that's the next step where you see that movement. So we're talking about, you know, the telephone company, the utility companies, all those companies that depend on Black folk for their bottom line too. And so it now moves to another stage of that conversation. And I just think that
Congressman Thompson, sorry to interrupt you. Do you think that an economic boycott of the state of Mississippi is a viable option at this point?
Everything's on the table. And if the people of our state choose to allow Jackson to be treated as second-class citizens, then I think the public needs to know this and exercise their alternatives to not come and spend their money in the state. It's not right. It's not legal. But sure, you have the majority, but that doesn't mean that the laws you pass don't have adverse impact on the people. Now, I think if at some point they go forward with this legislation, I think you'll see that as one of the options being offered. You know, the people I know, they love to come to Mississippi. You know, we were known historically as the hospitality state, but we also have good people. And, you know, people want to identify with the South. Even the bad stuff. I'm creating the Emmett Till issue in my district. Medgar Evers was killed in my district. Mount Bayou, Mississippi is the oldest all-Black town in America. We just got money to redo the founder's home. So there's a civil rights and an African-American legacy in the South that has value, and people will come to see that. But things like this harm that opportunity, because people are going to say, well, I'll go to Selma, Alabama, rather than Jackson, Mississippi, because the folk in Selma at least have turned the corner and not allowing Jim Crow 2.0 to raise its ugly head. So, look, it's an option. And I think that economic option can help us pull a lot of this back.
Well,
Yes, sir.
we are speaking with the chairman, Bennie Thompson, the honorable congressman from the state of Mississippi, Austin Cooper. I know you wanted to jump in. We really want to maximize the time that we have with you, Congressman. The journalists have been, the Black press journalists have been aching to ask you some questions. So I'm going to throw it back to Austin right quick.
Brother Chairman, if I can switch to January 6th, and thank you, sir, again for your leadership. On the morning of January 6th, did you arrive at the Capitol anticipating violence? I know I've heard that Congresswoman Barbara Lee, your colleague, said that she arrived, that she wore sneakers to the Capitol.
Well, look, demonstrations is a daily occurrence, as you know, in Washington, D.C. Somebody is advocating for or against something, and that's who we are as a country. I mean, that's that fundamental freedom that we enjoy. We knew, because at that point I chaired the Homeland Security Committee, and I had been briefed on the potential for something to occur, but none of that briefing prepared me for what actually occurred on January 6th. We canceled leave for policemen, for Capitol Police. We brought barriers in, not the right kind of barriers after the fact. We brought those barriers for parades and stuff like that. That was, as far as we could tell at that point, there was no real physical harm there. We learned after the fact that there were plenty things that were missed. So I was there on January 6th. I was happy, first of all, because my candidate won. And I wanted to see the process. In America, normally we settle our differences at the ballot box,
That's right.
So they had gone to court over 60 times and for the most part lost all the cases. So it was over. The recounts didn't change anything. But what my committee's work showed is that Donald Trump was the puppet master of what occurred on January 6th.
And you gave the DOJ a mountain of evidence. Do you anticipate that they're going to act on it?
Oh, yeah. Well, they are acting on it already. Some of the people have been subpoenaed. Vice President, for instance, we negotiated trying to get him to come in, and basically he didn't. Well, the special counsel has already moved on subpoenaing. There's a lot of witness members of Congress who ultimately will be called in who refused to come. Our body was a legislative body. This is a prosecutorial body, that grand jury, special counsel,
yes.
Different animal altogether. And so you would have expected members of Congress and other people who've taken an oath to uphold the Constitution to come and do just that, even if you come and plead the fifth. But under no circumstances would you not come. I think, given the information that will come out that we developed, some of our members were complicit in what went on January 6th. The record
Congressman,
will
how
reflect
disappointed? Let me ask you this. I'm sorry. How disappointed would you be if, and let's get to the point, Trump and those members of Congress that you're speaking about, how disappointed would it be if the Justice Department fails to issue any type of indictments?
Well, it would be a travesty on justice that people who conspired to undermine the peaceful transfer of power in this country would get away with it based on the evidence that we uncovered. We were comfortable that occurred. But again, you know, the only real culprit that was irrefutable in this whole process was Donald Trump. And so we had no problem pointing the finger at the person who orchestrated everything.
Who's running for president?
By that, again, and we think by running for president, he thinks he can run from justice.
Yeah.
And but again, in the South, we say also you can run, but you can't hide.
Yeah, Mr. Congressman, I just heard yesterday that Kevin McCarthy gave Tucker Carlson 41,000. I don't know what it is, but access camera footage of
41,000 hours of tape.
Thank you, sir. 41,000 hours of tapes.
Yeah, that we had. And by the way, I think NNPA ought to make a request for that same information.
Yeah.
It should not be solely for Fox News. And if they don't, you need to make a stink of it and say, wait now, we're the press, and we see you've given it to them. What were the ground rules that allowed them to get it, and we can't follow as the black press?
Yeah.
And I think that's McCarthy's Achilles heel in this whole process.
Yeah.
What we're going to try to do over the next week or so, we want to see what document was executed for that transfer of this information. You know, you can't just say, oh, it's in the closet, go get it. You know, there's still some safeguards
process
that you have to put in place. A lot of this material, some of it was privileged. Did you say, well, if anything is privileged, you can't reveal it? You know, you can't just open the store and just let somebody come in and clean it out. So I just think that now he's done that, I think every media entity ought to make a similar request.
Yeah, absolutely. How difficult is it?
Look, I hate to cut you off, but
no problem. Okay.
Now, Fox News is the same entity that was saying, for the most part, that the election was stolen. Even when the evidence that has come about in the Dominion voting case, machine case, says that they knew that the election had not been stolen, but they kept pushing an alternate narrative. And now all of a sudden McCarthy is giving that same network access to all this material, you know? And the question is, again, is whether or not there's an objective meaning behind what he's doing, or there's a sinister meaning behind what he's doing. And for somebody who's already lied about the election as a network, and then you go and give them access to all this information, on its face, people like me and elsewhere, we have to be suspicious.
But how much of a national security? What are the implications for national security? Because I'm sure there's footage from cameras that aren't revealed publicly, and information on there that deals with national security.
There are serious national security implications. A lot of it we saw and did not share with the public as a committee. A lot of the footage comes from Capitol Police and other non-public areas that should not be shared, because you put everybody who works in the Capitol at risk when you start sharing this kind of information. But again, it goes back to my question of the speaker: is what document was executed in the transfer of this information? And I'm sure the black press would say, okay, if Fox signed it in order to get access to it, we'll sign it. But don't deny us access, or don't give me a different document than the document you gave Fox. And by the way, my understanding of the law is that if anything was put in writing associated with this transfer of all this tape, it's a public document. It's no longer a private document. So I'm not going to push you off the cliff, NNPA, but I'm trying to nudge you to take that move. Because, I think the other networks gonna probably get off in the middle of this in the next day or so, because
this is breaking news. David Youngblood says, "Yep, this is breaking news, Congressman." He says issues of national security interests were in those tapes given to Tucker Carlson. Y'all heard it here on Let It Be Known, the Black Press First. The chairman says issues of national security were on those tapes. This is serious, Congressman. How difficult it is to serve. It may not be too difficult to serve with someone who might be incompetent, somebody who might be a little insolent, but how difficult is it to serve with people who show themselves to be just overt racist? How difficult is that?
Traitors.
And
traitors.
It's
a challenge. It's a challenge. And see, in this situation, there's a pattern. I think Speaker McCarthy, because of his challenge to become Speaker, basically has made so many
concessions
off the record to become Speaker that basically he cannot say no to certain people, and he can't say no to Margaret Taylor Greene and some of those other folk, because it took him too long to get to Speaker. And every time a vote was taken, people went to try to, how can we get another vote? And so ultimately he got to the number that he needed, but it's clear as we go forward that he had to basically give up all the powers and authorities inherent in a traditional speaker to get it. And so by giving it to Fox, I'm not surprised, because they've been in his corner. They've been promoting an alternate reality as to what went on with the elections. And this is part of payback for the Fox network by giving them access to all this information from January 6th.
But doesn't that also show they have no fear of any type of action taken against him to give him? I can understand if they wanted to give him something to placate him, give Fox something to placate him, Tucker Carlson, but they gave them so many, like you said, 41,000 hours, including things that should never have been released publicly. What do you say about that? What does that tell you? They're not afraid of anything.
Well, these are the same folk who critical of the president for going to the Ukraine. I said, you're president of the United States. This is your ally who needs your help. But on this instance alone, the speaker should have used better judgment. The speaker should have consulted with the minority leader, Hakeem Jeffries, as well as others. You know, I chaired the committee. I can tell you that there are clearly information that we chose not to put in the public arena because of its sensitivity.
Can the speaker be removed because of this? Can he be removed, Congressman, because of this?
Well, you can always make the allegation, but he's there. I just think that bad business on his part. It's a bad policy, and it will not just harm his speakership, but the potential release of some of the information on those tapes.
It's going to harm the country.
Risk.
It's going to harm the country.
Well, what would happen to Congressman Bennie Thompson if he released confidential information of national security interest?
Double standard.
Well, that oath of office that I take and every other member of Congress takes, that you are not supposed to release any of that kind of information. Could you come in possession of it? If you do, you have violated your oath of office and broke the law. Well, he's going to hide by saying, well, I didn't look at the 41,000 hours. I didn't know it was there. It was, a bad decision on my part. That's not the case. So,
Mr. Chairman, this is
one of the ways. Go ahead.
Sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Chairman. Sorry to interrupt you.
Well, one of the ways we can see if this is a partisan effort on his part is for the black press to make a request for that same information. If he turns you down, then it's clear to everybody then.
And Mr. Chairman, this is the same Fox News that the speaker turned over 41,000 hours of footage to, the same Fox News that we now know because of released emails in a courtroom that even these anchors, Tucker Carlson and others, did not even believe in the big lie.
Well, that's right. And you turn the tapes over to the guy who was the cheerleader of lies that being told. And even when he knew that what he was saying was wrong, he kept saying it. And now I don't know what that means from a journalistic standpoint, but we can have difference of opinions. But when the facts say something altogether different and the facts are irrefutable and you still try to promote an alternate situation, that's not journalism, and so you turn this kind of information over to people who have been proven in a court of law not to tell the truth about the subject that they've already acknowledged in court. Now, I want you to understand now, I'm not talking apples to oranges. Fox News has turned this information over to the courts in a lawsuit. And now that same Fox now has access to the information around January 6th.
This is very criminal. This is very criminal.
The speaker should have said, well, if you all had not turned this information over because it's clear you're in a compromised position publicly. People can have opinions, but now you're on the record in the court. It's being opposite of the position you were taking based on the facts. I can't let you have it, but he did.
Mr. Congressman, how do you and your colleagues in the Democratic Party deal with a mob that isn't really a political party, that doesn't care about facts, that is only interested in holding and advancing political power for white people? How do you all deal with it? Because it seems as if it's two different worlds colliding in Congress.
Well, the thing that I like about the majority of my colleagues in Congress, a majority of them still believe in the rule of law. A majority of them still believe that America is a nation of laws. But we have some people who come to this body now who differs substantially. Margaret Taylor Greene, for instance, just tweeted that we need to have a divorce between the red and blue states. Well, that's the Civil War coming back again. You know, that's that 2.0 version of divide and conquer, or that us and them. So it's a challenge. And so what we try to do, based on the facts, is still promote the truth. A lot of our colleagues could give a tinker's damn about the truth. Just you know, do whatever they do. So, and we take that with a grain of salt. But I'll be honest with you. You know, I'll celebrate 30 years in this institution in a couple of months, and I've never seen it this partisan. I've never seen the lack of respect for the institution that I see now. And so unless we can get the press to help us tell that story, it'll only get worse. And so the Black press is so important in the process because, you know, we now have more Black people in Congress than we've ever had before. We have more brown people in Congress than we've ever had before. So basically, Congress is beginning to reflect the shifting demographics of the population of our country. But we got to have a press posture that reflects that change. If not, then that alternate message will continue to be pushed out to the multitude. So you know, I'm beating your drum, but I'm beating your drum saying help us get that message out.
We're here when you need us, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. And Congressman, before we let you go, just a couple of quick other things. We talked about the January 6th commission you chaired. You did an amazing job. I'm pretty sure it's my guess that you received a lot of threats as chairman of the January 6th commission and the work that you were doing. Can you talk a little bit about the difficulty of doing that amid, if you can confirm that there have been threats made against you, and how difficult it was to get that work done? And you're very, very outspoken about who is responsible. Donald J. Trump and other members of Congress are also complicit. You've been very forthcoming with that. Talk about getting that together under such scrutiny and threats. Many others may have just said, you know what, it's not worth it.
Yeah, it was a challenge. I look back and let me say, every member on the January 6th committee ended up with a security detail. I don't know many other committees, but every member, the moment they would land in Washington, the Capitol Police would meet them at the airport and be with them until they get back on the plane. I mean, it was that kind of deal. When you get to your home, another detail would meet you at the airport at home, and they'd be at your house until you left coming back to Washington. So it was and that was based on the threat level. They did an assessment. They looked at the social media postings and all of that. And, you know, some of these folk are crazy enough to call your office. And so they said, nope, we're gonna give everybody a security detail.
Mm.
So it was that, but it was also um, what was being said that harmed people. It was, talking about your family members. You can pick on Bennie Thompson, but leave my wife, my daughter, my grandkids alone.
Your
You know,
family.
but so they were trying to broaden that, and so for all that time, it was a challenge. We had witnesses that we wanted to come and talk to us at the committee, and I'll be honest with you, they were afraid. They
Yeah.
just said, and we couldn't
Absolutely.
guarantee them, uh, uh, a level of security that something would happen. A couple of members, of people who did testify, we moved them out of their apartment before they testified.
Wow.
And put them in an undisclosed location because we were concerned about their own welfare. And after they testified, for the most part, they left town that same day. So,
Wow.
so it was it was something that the annals of history over time will tell you that we went through. But in every one of our presentations, we said, if you disagree with what we are saying, please feel free to contact us. And if we deem what you say would have value, we welcome you to come and be a witness, either in public or in private, but you have to do it under oath. Yeah. And if you lie to us under oath, we're going to charge you with perjury.
Consequences, perjury.
Yeah.
Nobody took us up. Nobody took us up on it.
Congressman,
Wow.
if I may, I just have one final question, sir. So going back to Mississippi, you have been involved in civil rights for your entire life. Thank you for that. Thank you for your sacrifice. But today, February 21st, 2023, when you think of race relations in Jackson and your state, what gives you the most hope and what gives you the greatest despair?
Well, racial block voting is still a reality in this state, like it is in a lot of states. Black people will vote for a white person more often than a white person who will vote for a black person.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate. The other situation is there's still a separate and an unequal system of how things are done. For instance, there are 3 major universities in Mississippi: Ole Miss, Mississippi State University, Southern Mississippi. They're held at a different tier than Jackson State, Mississippi Valley State, and Alcorn. But they're all the state colleges. Jackson State University is the only state-supported institution in Jackson, Mississippi. But the medical school is attached to Ole Miss. The dental school is attached to Ole Miss. The law school is attached to Ole Miss. And the majority of the lawyers practice in Jackson, Mississippi. So the natural would have been that. But so there's a lot of things. The presidents of the colleges make different salaries than the historically black college president. So that disparity, when you look at financial institutions in this state, they give you lip service, but when you look at who's on the bank boards, when you look at all those C-suite positions, we still have a challenge. We've come a long way getting elected, but we haven't come nearly as long as we need to be accepted. It's like white politicians come to black churches all the time and say, "Oh, I'm going to do all that. I'm going to do this for you," but they never invite you to come to their church for service.
Yeah.
Now that's instructive. You know what I'm saying? You come to my church and campaign, but you never invite me to your church. Now, I don't know if they do that in other parts of the country, but we got to stop that. If you're gonna come sit in the service, we'll recognize you, and that's it. But they never move us to that next level. Mm-hmm. So we still have a way to go. But our real problem, and it's systemic in the South primarily, is our most important product is our educated citizens. And we still lose too many of them to other parts of the country. So we can't really replenish ourselves to the extent that we need because we just don't have that talent pool. I meet people from Mississippi all over the country. There was a young lady that was in my class at Tougaloo. There was a brain surgeon in Los Angeles. Well, she came back after she retired, but she spent her career in California because she couldn't get a job. My cardiologist was interviewed for Harvard University by a professor at University Medical Center here in Jackson, got accepted, completed Harvard, but he could not go to the University Medical Center in Jackson, Mississippi. You see what
Congressman,
I'm saying? So
Congressman, we have about 2 minutes left, and I know Barrington has another question. But let me ask you this, and then I'll throw it to Barrington. We hear a lot of African Americans still talk about President Biden and the crime bill, still hold that against him. Now, President Biden, when he ran for president, he made some promises to the Black community. He's been working. We've seen, from our view, he's really been working to fulfill those promises. You got the Black Black Vice President, Black Supreme Court Justice, Black woman Supreme Court Justice, among other things that he's been doing. The recent executive orders. How much do you believe, if any, is this President Biden making up for Congressman or Senator Biden's crime bill?
Well, let me tell you, I have, when I came here, Bill Clinton was president. But I remember Ronald Reagan. I remember a whole bunch of presidents. And I can say unequivocally that the Biden administration, if you look at the entirety of his record, has had more impact on the Black community than any other president. He's the only president that acknowledges the past and has on paper put a policy in place to talk about equity in every department. He talks about highways splitting the Black community, and you put in an infrastructure and transportation package that has to be one of the prime focuses that you look when you spend this money. And how can we repair the breach that occurred in these communities? So that's look, in the eyes of some of these folks, that's heresy to admit the past wrong, but it's even courage to put a policy in place to address it. Now, if you say, has he been perfect? No. But if I had to judge the financial investment that's been put over the last 2 years in the Black community, there's no comparison. And that's, I don't care who was president. And so we have to take what we have and we go forward. And for him to last week do the Emmett Till movie in the White House.
Yeah.
You know, can you imagine showing a film on the killing of Emmett Till in the White House? And I'm sure a lot of folk didn't like it. So there are things, but let me tell you, I sat with Jim Clyburn and Marcy Fudge in Charleston, South Carolina, when we told Joe Biden, if you don't in this debate say to the people that if elected, you're gonna nominate a black woman to the Supreme Court, you're gonna lose the nomination. His advisors don't do it. And guess what? He did it.
He did it.
He's now president of the United States.
Yeah, and just earlier that day, Congressman, perhaps you know this, but earlier that day, candidate Joe Biden met with Dr. Benjamin Chavis and a bunch of black publishers down in Charleston. I was there, and it seemed to have really reinvigorated that campaign. And then he met with you guys, and you did what you did, and he went on there, like you said, and followed that sound advice to the T. And like you said, he's in the White House now. I want to throw it over to Barrington for the last question. Congressman, we really appreciate your time today. Barrington.
Thank you, sir. I'm just wondering, I have to give you all the credit in the world, you and your colleagues, particularly those of you who are legislators in the South. And I'm wondering, with the cancer that exists, the conservative, radical, racist conservative agenda, how are you all strategizing on ways to kill this thing, or are you just trying to find ways to accommodate it since you're in the minority?
No, I think we have to fight it with every fiber in our body, but we have to be smart as we fight. And so I think what's developing is with the help of the black press, we can share the alternatives. For instance, this governor of ours is running for re-election this year in Mississippi, and he's against Medicaid expansion. Well, if Mississippi had taken Medicaid expansion dollars, they would have had access to $14 billion in the last 9 years.
Yeah.
Well, that means that 5 hospitals that have closed would not have closed. That means that the 4 hospitals that are in bankruptcy, that means that the others that are no longer can offer emergency room service could do it. But when you put it in economic terms, okay, when you say this medical supply company can no longer operate in this community because the hospital is shutting down or cutting back. When this pharmaceutical sales, you know, when you make it economic, you start saying, oh, it's more than black and white. It's also green. And so what we are trying to do is change the conversation to that level. And so we are fighting in the midst of all this stuff, trying to force this governor to take Medicaid expansion opportunities. He said, well, I offered $80 million to the hospitals. I said, yeah, but if you take Medicaid expansion, you get $1 billion and it doesn't cost you any money.
Yeah.
And so we're just trying to get the word out. Look, I could say, well, look, giving up is not an option. We're going to have to fight as long as we can. And I hope, and you know, hope springs eternal. And we'll just have to not give up, because failure is not an option.
Yeah, failure is
Good.
not an option.
That's good to hear, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your time, sir.
And what's amazing here, Chairman Thompson, is we thank you. Many of your colleagues that we've had on in the past, they are being pulled left and right by their aides. They give us a couple of minutes. We got to go. We got to go. Congressman, we appreciate you spent all this time this morning with the Black press. It is vital, and we hope that you take this back to your colleagues in the Congressional Black Caucus and let them know we are friends of the CBC, and they have a platform here at the Black Press. Dr. Chavis won't hear anything other than that. They have a platform at the Black Press, and they should utilize it. So we thank you so much for doing that. And thank you for breaking some really important news with us this morning. And this is where y'all should all break your news, with the Black Press of America. Yeah. Thanks for joining. Let it be known. Congressman, thank you. And we will see you guys tomorrow.
Thank you.